Let me ask you a question. How does a total outsider, someone with zero royal blood, from a background everybody distrusts, somehow manage to snatch a crown? It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, right? But this really happened. It's one of the most incredible political climbs in all of ancient history. So let's break it down. It really comes down to a perfect storm of raw ambition, complete chaos, and just perfect timing. See, the story of Herod the Great isn't just about one guy. It's a masterclass in how you seize power when every single odd is stacked against you. So, today we're going to follow the playbook, step by step. It all starts with a ruling family that just completely implodes on itself. That creates a huge power vacuum, which of course attracts the superpower of the day, Rome. And then we get to see how a really ambitious outsider plays his hand perfectly, gets himself a crown, and then has to go back and conquer the very kingdom he was just given. All right, so our story really kicks off with a family just tearing itself apart. We're talking about the Hasmonean dynasty, the rulers of Judea at the time. The whole thing really lit up in 76 BCE, right after the death of their queen, Salome Alexandra. Now, she left behind two sons, and they had very different ideas about who should rule, and wildly different personalities. The kingdom was plunged headfirst into a brutal civil war. On one side, you've got Hyrcanus II. He's the rightful heir, he's the high priest, but he's kind of weak, very cautious. And on the other side, his younger brother, Aristobulus, a total warrior, aggressive, and absolutely hungry for that throne. Yeah, it was the perfect recipe for disaster. And they're fighting just threw the whole kingdom into chaos. Now, here's the most important part. While these two brothers were so focused on destroying each other, they basically left the front door of the kingdom wide open. And that kind of weakness, it never, ever goes unnoticed, especially by a superpower waiting in the wings. And yup, Rome was watching, and its eagle was about to land right in the middle of Jerusalem. Just look at how fast everything completely fell apart. The Civil War starts in 76 BCE. A mere 13 years later, the Roman general Pompey the Great marches his legions straight into Jerusalem. And just like that, a whole century of Judean independence, poof, it's gone. From that moment on, Judea became what we call a client state. Now, what that means is, on paper, it might look independent. But in reality, the real power, the final word on who rules, who fights, who pays taxes, all of it now belonged to Rome. And Pompey played this masterfully. I mean, it's classic Roman strategy. He props up the weaker brother, Hyrcanus. He makes him high priest, but, and this is a big but, he does not make him king. Why? Well, this made sure the local leader was way too weak to ever challenge Rome and owed his entire position to them. Pretty smart. So this brand new Roman-dominated world was the perfect breeding ground for a new kind of political operator. And this is where our main character's family finally steps onto the stage. Okay, to really understand Herod, you have to get this. He was an Idumean, and that is a huge deal. The Idumeans came from a region that the Hasmonean dynasty, the very family now at war, had conquered, and they were forced to convert to Judaism about a century before. So to the old money elite families in Jerusalem, Herod was a total newcomer, an outsider whose loyalty and even his faith was always in question. I mean, just stop and think about the irony here for a second. The Hasmonean dynasty conquers a people, forces them into their world, and then, through their own stupid infighting, they create the perfect power vacuum for a family from that exact group to rise up and take everything from them. It's unbelievable. You just can't make this stuff up. And Antipater, Herod's dad, was an absolute master at this political game. He was so clever, he backed the weaker brother, Hyrcanus, making himself totally indispensable as his chief advisor. But at the exact same time, he was building these deep personal connections with Roman heavy hitters, like Julius Caesar himself. And all that political maneuvering paid off big time in 47 BCE. Antipater cashed in his Roman connections to get his ambitious son, Herod, appointed as the governor of Galilee. The family wasn't just whispering in the shadows anymore, they were officially on the political map. But Herod's path to the throne, oh man, it was anything but a straight line. It actually involved a dramatic fall from grace and an even more unbelievable comeback. So by 41 BCE, Herod's star is definitely rising. But just 1 year later, his whole world comes crashing down. A rival Hasmonean prince, backed by Rome's enemies, stages a coup. Herod's brother is captured and killed, and Herod himself becomes a fugitive, literally running for his life. So, what do you do when you've lost everything? Well, if you're Herod, you do something crazy. You run straight into the lion's den, to Rome itself. He manages to get an audience with the Senate. And here is the wildest part. He doesn't even ask for the throne for himself. But the Romans, they were just sick and tired of the Hasmonean drama. They needed someone strong, someone loyal. They looked at this desperate fugitive in front of them and thought, that's our guy. In a move that shocked literally everyone, the Roman Senate completely ignores the old dynasty and names Herod King of the Jews. Okay, so he's got the title from Rome. That's fantastic. But there's just one tiny little problem. You can't exactly rule a kingdom from 1,000 miles away. You see, the Roman Senate had given him a piece of paper, a title. But back in Judea, his rival was sitting on the actual throne. He was a king in name only. If he wanted to make it real, Herod would have to go back not as a politician, but as a conqueror. And that meant war. But Herod was smart. He knew he couldn't just show up looking like Rome's puppet. He needed some local legitimacy. So he makes this absolutely brilliant political move. He marries Mariamne, who just happens to be a Hasmonean princess. This move connected him by marriage to the very same royal family he was getting ready to wipe off the map. His final conquest was this brutal 3-year campaign. First, he called in his IOUs with his Roman patrons like Mark Antony to get a real army. Then he fought this long, grueling war across the entire country. Then he laid siege to Jerusalem itself until it finally fell. And for the final ruthless act, he had his rival, Antigonus, captured and executed, erasing the last Hasmonean contender for good. So here we are, 37 BCE. The outsider, the Idumean, Herod, is now the official, undisputed king of Judea, with the full might of the Roman Empire standing right behind him. A new dynasty, the Herodian dynasty, had begun. So he did it. He actually won. He outplayed every rival, he won over the most powerful empire in the world, and he conquered his own kingdom. But that leaves us with one massive hanging question, doesn't it? Could a king who took power by force, a ruler that so many of his own people saw as a total fraud, could he ever really win their hearts? Well, that struggle would define the rest of his long and very, very bloody reign.